Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and I'm doing a small update to my Extreme Trial Guide for patch 6.3. I felt pretty good about those strats as we went through the fight on day 1, but of course there's always room for improvement, and day 1 strats are rarely the best strats that you can have out there. So in this video, I want to provide an update that may help you if you're going into the Party Finder, stuff you're going to see more frequently, and stuff that I personally think will make it even easier. So for the most part, I found my guide is on point with what most people are doing. That's the nature of things like fuses, the light party split, and the ad phase, basically the first 50 to 60%. However, two mechanics are much more open, Flame Spire Brand and Flame Spire Claw. The current strategy for Flame Spire Brand is the first thing we'll talk about, and it's definitely my go-to recommendation. As a refresher, Flame Spire Brand is the mechanic where 4 players get proximity AoEs, 1 player gets a stack debuff, and you need to share that with the 3 players that don't have anything. This is followed up by an 8-player spread that does give magic vuln, so you really need to make sure those are spread out. For the updated strategy for this one, we're going to have every player start in their clock spot, which you should have assigned for the other mechanics anyway. Now, once the Flame Rake AoE stops spinning, sidestep into the safe quadrant if necessary. From here, players with the stack or nothing debuffs go all the way into the center of the room and share the damage from this, while the proximity marked role stays in the outer edge of the arena. You can actually still get max melee uptime here, and it more neatly resolves the mechanic in question. Then everyone goes back to their clock spot for the spread right after. The major advantages of this are actually numerous. Keeping every player around their assigned clock spot means you don't have to kind of shuffle around to get safe for the spread. It makes movement very easy and predictable for casters without hurting the melees in any way. Finally, it reduces the amount of, as I call it, insurance mitigation that you may feel you need to apply, which you would be much better off using for the Inferno and for all the mechanics that come right after Flame Spire Brand. I see no reason to do this any other way. There's really almost no downside to the entire thing, even if the low overall damage from all those debuffs other than the spreads really means you can get away with a lot here. Now for Flame Spire Claw, which you'll often see in the PF referred to as LC, short for Limit Cut, the strategy I came up with in the guide and the one that I used on day 1, I do see being used in the Party Finder. Teams are just trying to keep the tethers a bit more separated than in my initial clear video to make the passes more consistent. And this is actually something that improves the success rate a lot. You see, if you stack the tethers like you saw in the guide, then there is one additional thing you need to keep on your mind: the order of the players and how they're standing relative to each other. Every player that comes in needs to be in front of the player before them. So 2 needs to stand in front of 1, 3 in front of 2, 4 in front of 3, etc., etc. This is to ensure that the tethers pass properly and that a number doesn't hold on to one for too long, because then you get the 5 stack and then everything blows up. For this reason, one strategy I saw floating around I'm inclined to not recommend. For this one, the cleaves will go west and east, with odds on the west and evens on the east. Players marked 3 through 6 will start on the south side of the room, and 7 and 8 will start north with the tethers, since the tethers will always target 7 and 8 first. Then, as you complete your cleaves, you go and you step in front of the group that's all huddled north, and 7 and 8 eventually loop around to do their cleaves on the west and east side. This makes it less of a merry-go-round and more of a conveyor belt of responsibility. However, the safe spots north and south are quite narrow, so it more heavily forces the tethers to be handled in that consecutive order method I described from before, and again, I wouldn't really recommend that, at least not in the Party Finder. Fortunately, there is an easy fix. Odds and evens just split the room in 2. In our group, we had odd cleaves west, even cleaves east. For the tethers, all the odd tethers were handled on the north side of the room and the even tethers south. They still have those really narrow safe spots, but realistically, how much do you need to be spreading out here? This ensures absolutely no tether shenanigans, and it honestly just declutters each half of the room. Instead of having all 8 people trying to do the mechanic on the same side, you have a little bit more space to breathe, and sometimes that makes a difference for people mentally. Keep in mind, I've seen the exact same strat with different setups. I've seen like north and south for the cleaves, and then east and west for the tethers. All that matters is you know what your Party Finder leader wants you to do, and you understand how the mechanic works. There's no reason you can't mentally flip it 90 degrees, right? And with that, I think this update to my original guide strategies gives us one of the most ideal Party Finder strats you could have. I will say that I did like something else I saw in the Party Finder, and that was the consolidation of how to do the spreads for sweeping immolation. This was just group 1 to the left, group 2 to the right, and then tanks and melees in front and ranged and healers in the back. Just gotta make sure your team knows exactly what your orientations are there. I've seen people put healers closer to the middle, that way they're closer for the healing, and I've seen people put DPS behind DPS just because they want to. Whatever way works, just make sure your Party Finder's doing it some sort of standard way, and Rubicante should be a pretty easy farm. I had a lot of success with it, and it really helps that the encounter doesn't punish you for having people dead, as long as they're dead before the mechanic starts. So that was very much appreciated. Anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned. I got my usual other stuff coming, 24-man stuff, duty support, plus State of the Realm weekly Q&As. You know the drill. Just subscribe to the channel and keep an eye in your inbox. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.